The scream cut through the quiet night like a knife. 1 second, the street was empty. The next, chaos. Shadows danced on the walls. A door shattered, and a man thought he had escaped justice. But she survived, and she would speak. If this story shook you, make sure to subscribe and click the bell to Cold Case Secrets, where we uncover the truth behind the world's darkest mysteries. Maplewood, a small suburban town tucked between rolling hills and dense forests, had always been a kind of place where everyone knew each other's birthdays, pets, and favorite coffee shops. The streets were calm, and neighbors waved from their porches in the evenings. A sense of security ran so deep that most residents left doors unlocked without thinking twice. Amelia Parker, 28, fit perfectly into this picturesque community. She was a quiet kind of generous, always volunteering at the library, helping students with research, making birthday cakes for her co-workers, never asking for anything in return. Her life seemed ordinary, predictable, safe. But the night of October 14th, 2016, would shatter that illusion. Michael Donnelly, 34, lived just a few blocks away. At first glance, he looked harmless, polite, clean-cut, and seemingly unremarkable. To the town, he was the last person anyone would suspect of harboring darkness. The air that night carried the first hint of autumn chill, leaves rustling across empty sidewalks as if whispering secrets. Inside her home, Amelia felt nothing but the comfort of routine. She had no idea that one ordinary evening would plunge her life and her town into terror. Amelia returned home later than usual. The library had been busy, patrons lingering with last-minute questions. She turned the corner to her street, the orange glow of street lamps casting long, distorted shadows on the pavement. The neighborhood was quiet, the way it usually was at this hour. She didn't notice the figure across the street, pacing, waiting. Michael Donnelly had been watching for weeks. At first, neighbors thought nothing of it. He seemed like a man simply taking nightly walks. But his presence was different. Deliberate, observant, calculated. That night, the assault unfolded with terrifying precision. Amelia never had a chance to scream. He forced his way inside, overpowering her, silencing her in her own home. Her mind raced. Every instinct screamed for her to run, to fight, but she quickly realized that survival meant strategy. By the time officers arrived after a frantic 911 call, the scene had already been tampered with. Evidence hidden, doors locked, a room rearranged to conceal the crime. Yet small mistakes betrayed him. A footprint in the damp mud outside, fingerprints on a window, a trace of hair caught on furniture. Detectives would later call it a crime almost perfect. Almost. Detective Laura Simmons was assigned to the case. She had seen her share of assault reports, but something about this one unsettled her. The neighborhood was familiar, safe, or so it had seemed. And now a predator had been hiding in plain sight. Officers canvassed the streets, knocking on doors, reviewing security footage. Hours of video revealed little. Shadows, passing headlights, fleeting movements. Yet in one clip, Donnelly lingered near Amelia's home, pacing the sidewalk as if rehearsing his actions. Interviews with neighbors painted a chilling picture. Some had seen him watching her for weeks. Others remembered late-night pacing, muttering to himself. No one thought to report him after all. Maplewood was a town where appearances meant everything. Amelia's courage became the cornerstone of the investigation. After weeks of therapy and counsel, she agreed to provide a detailed statement. She recounted every moment with calm precision. The way he approached, the subtle details in his voice, the texture of fear that hung in the air. Weeks passed with frustratingly slow progress. Evidence was collected, analyzed, and cross-checked against state databases. At first, nothing led to a definitive suspect. Then came a small breakthrough. A neighbor had kept detailed notes on unusual activity. Dates, times, descriptions of a man lurking. DNA from the crime scene matched Michael Donnelly's records. Arrest warrants were issued. His calm, polite demeanor in the neighborhood was shattered when detectives arrived at his home. Inside, they found incriminating evidence. Clothing with traces of DNA, objects used to manipulate the crime scene, and a journal detailing plans that hinted at future assaults. The town reeled. Michael Donnelly, the neighbor who had waved politely just days before, was now the central figure in a shocking revelation. The first court hearing brought the full weight of the town's shock into focus. Residents filled the courtroom, listening as Amelia spoke. Her testimony was calm, steady, yet every word carried the invisible weight of trauma. She described the assault in detail. What she saw, what she felt, the moment she feared would end her life. The community, initially in disbelief, began to understand the depth of the betrayal. A man they trusted, a neighbor they had welcomed, had been capable of unspeakable violence. Maplewood's sense of safety, its foundation of trust, crumbled in that moment. After Michael Donnelly's arrest, detectives began to uncover layers of his life that no one in Maplewood had ever suspected. On the surface, he had ordinary routine visits to the grocery store, polite greetings to neighbors, and a steady job as an office clerk. But beneath that veneer, investigators found a pattern of obsession, manipulation, and dark intent. Financial records showed he had purchased items that seemed innocuous but were later linked to premeditation. Notes hidden in his apartment referenced other homes, other streets, other women. It was almost as if he had been testing the boundaries of Maplewood, waiting for the moment he could act without consequence. Detectives pored over hours of digital correspondence. Hidden accounts, encrypted messages, and anonymous posts painted a grim portrait. Donnelly had been planning assaults for months, possibly years, keeping a meticulous record of each opportunity and each near miss. He had underestimated Amelia. Amelia, meanwhile, struggled with the aftermath. Returning to her daily life was impossible. Sleep was punctuated by nightmares. Every unexpected sound in her home made her heart race. Yet, amid fear, a sense of purpose began to grow. She realized that survival alone was not enough. She had to speak, to ensure he could never harm anyone else. Maplewood, once quiet and trusting, was now a town on edge. Doors that had always remained unlocked were bolted tight. Parents no longer allowed their children to wander streets unsupervised. Even neighbors who had once smiled at Donnelly found themselves questioning every interaction, every casual wave. At the library, Amelia returned to work, but the atmosphere had changed. Patrons whispered, casting sideways glances. The familiar comfort routine was replaced by a constant, gnawing tension. Yet her resolve strengthened. She began attending community meetings, offering her testimony not only in court but in forums dedicated to awareness and prevention. Detective Simmons noted that Amelia's bravery inspired other victims to come forward. A network of survivors began to form, small but determined, united by the same drive, to ensure the predators like Donnelly could not act in the shadows. The trial preparations were meticulous. Every detail of the crime scene, every trace of DNA, every witness statement was analyzed and cataloged. Prosecutors emphasized the premeditated nature of the assault, demonstrating the careful planning Donnelly had undertaken. Defense attorneys attempted to question Amelia's recollection, suggesting inconsistencies in memory under trauma. But investigators and psychologists backed her testimony, explaining how trauma impacts perception, yet does not diminish the accuracy of key observations. During the pre-trial period, more alarming discoveries surfaced. Security footage from nearby streets revealed that Donnelly had approached other homes, lingered in the shadows, and sometimes retreated when he sensed the risk of being seen. The detective team concluded that Amelia's survival had not been a matter of luck. It had been an anomaly in his otherwise predatory pattern. Weeks into the investigation, a critical revelation emerged. Digital evidence indicated that Donnelly may not have been acting entirely alone. Anonymous messages reference a network of men exchanging information about potential victims. While authorities could not immediately identify others, the discovery suggested a level of organization far beyond a single predator. This revelation sent shockwaves through the community. The nightmare was no longer just Amelia's. Maplewood had been a small piece of a much larger puzzle. Investigators now faced the grim possibility that other towns, other families, may have been touched by this unseen network. Amelia's testimony became pivotal. Her descriptions of Donnelly's behaviors, of his calculated movements, and of his communications helped authorities connect fragments of evidence that would have otherwise remained isolated. She became more than a survivor. She became a key witness in a larger investigation. As the trial date approached, Investigators focused on the final pieces of evidence. Donnelly had left behind a journal, filled with cryptic notes, references to other women, and personal reflections that revealed a chilling mindset. It was as if he had documented his crimes for some future purpose, proof, in his mind, of his cunning. For the first time, Amelia was confronted with the full scope of what could have happened. The evidence showed that she had survived only because of a combination of courage, timing, and perhaps a sliver of luck. The thought that other women may not have been as fortunate added weight to every court session, every testimony, and every decision she made about speaking publicly. Detective Simmons, reviewing the journal, noticed an anomaly, a page hidden between seemingly mundane entries, referenced a location in the woods outside Maplewood. It mentioned a second person, a contact, someone waiting. The line was brief, cryptic, almost coded but unmistakable. No one had considered the possibility of accomplices. No one had looked beyond Donnelly's immediate actions. And now, a new shadow emerged, one that threatened to rewrite everything the investigation had uncovered. Just when the community thought justice was imminent, the hidden connection in the woods suggested that Donnelly's actions were part of something far larger, a secret network, potentially targeting other victims. And as detectives prepared to search the location, they would uncover something that no one expected, a discovery that would change the course of the case entirely. The forest on the outskirts of Maplewood had always been quiet. Even in autumn, tall pines and thick underbrush made it easy to disappear, easy to imagine that no one would ever notice. But on this day, Detective Simmons and her team were not searching for a hiker or a missing pet. They were looking for answers. The journal's cryptic reference had pointed them here. A hidden location, mentioned briefly yet deliberately, suggested the presence of a second individual. Someone connected to Donnelly, someone who would help plan, observe, and perhaps even enable his crimes. As officers fanned out through the woods, the tension grew palpable. The air was thick with damp leaves and the faint smell of pine resin. But beneath it was something darker, an unshakable sense of anticipation. Every crack of a twig, every rustle of underbrush, made hearts beat faster. Then they found a small camouflage tent, partially hidden by fallen branches. Inside, the evidence was undeniable. Personal belongings, notes, and items linked to multiple assaults. The realization hit like a shockwave. Donnelly was not acting alone. He had been part of a network, a small but coordinated group preying on unsuspecting women across several towns. Detective Simmons knew the implications were staggering. Not only did this shift the scope of the case, but it also meant that Maplewood had been only one stop in a larger pattern of terror. Authorities reached out to surrounding jurisdictions, cross-referencing reports of similar assaults. The pattern was clear, a series of meticulously planned crimes, each perpetrated by individuals connected through digital channels, secret locations, and coded communications. Amelia was informed of the discovery. Though the news was terrifying, it reinforced her sense of purpose. She realized that her courage in speaking out was not just about her survival. It could prevent future crimes. Her testimony became critical, connecting Donnelly to the broader network and providing investigators with insights into his behaviors, patterns, and psychological profile. The community, however, could barely process the news. Maplewood, a town that prided itself on safety and neighborly trust, was now aware that darkness had been hiding in plain sight. Parents clutched their children tighter. Doors that had never been locked were bolted, and streets that had once felt welcoming now carried shadows of fear. The courtroom was tense as the trial began. Prosecutors laid out the evidence with surgical precision. DNA, fingerprints, security footage, and the journal discovered in the forest. Each piece was meticulously connected, showing a premeditated, methodical predator. Amelia's testimony was calm yet piercing. She described the assault, her observations, and the small inconsistencies in Donnelly's behavior that she had noticed. Her courage drew quiet awe from the court, but also a collective shiver. Every word reminded the town of what had almost gone unnoticed. Defense attorneys tried to discredit her, pointing to trauma-induced memory errors. But experts in forensic psychology explained the reliability of survivor testimony, especially when paired with physical evidence. Donnelly's meticulous planning and repeated attempts at concealment betrayed a conscious awareness of wrongdoing. Even with overwhelming evidence, The most shocking revelation came during cross-examination. Digital communications, revealed mid-trial, indicated that Donnelly had been coordinating with at least one other individual. A second suspect, previously unknown, had monitored Amelia's neighborhood, recording routines and sending instructions. The courtroom went silent. Maplewood collectively held its breath. The case was no longer just about one man. It was about a network, a shadow that had moved unseen among them for years. The shocking truth was that Donnelly had underestimated the very thing he believed would protect him. Amelia herself. Her resilience, her careful observation, and her willingness to speak had set off a chain of discoveries that would ultimately dismantle a criminal network. The accomplice, once hidden in shadows, was identified through digital evidence surveillance and a crucial tip from a cooperating witness. Arrests were made, and for the first time, authorities could see the full extent of the operation. But the most chilling revelation remained. There may have been other accomplices, other networks, other towns where unsuspecting victims had been targeted. The investigation, while groundbreaking, was far from complete. Maplewood's nightmare had only just been peeled back to reveal a far larger darkness. Donnelly was convicted on multiple counts of rape and assault. His accomplice faced charges as well. An ongoing investigation suggested more arrests could follow. Amelia found herself both vindicated and burdened. Her life would never return to simplicity it once held. Maplewood slowly began to heal. Community programs were strengthened, awareness campaigns launched, and security measures implemented. Yet beneath the surface, the fear lingered, the understanding that evil could hide behind ordinary faces, that appearances were not enough to protect anyone. Amelia continued to speak publicly, advocating for survivors and reminding the world that courage, truth, and vigilance could expose even the darkest plots. Some stories conclude with neat resolutions. Others remain unfinished, whispering in the quiet spaces where fear and hope collide. Amelia's story was a testament to survival, to bravery, and to the hidden truths that can exist just out of sight. And just as the town began to feel relief, investigators uncovered one final clue. A cryptic digital footprint, originating from an unknown location, suggested that Donnelly's network might extend further than anyone could imagine. Someone else had been watching, waiting, and planning. Maplewood had survived, but the shadow had not yet been fully revealed. And when it re-emerged, no one would be ready. Thank you for watching Cold Case Secrets. If this story moved you or made you think, make sure to subscribe and click the bell so you never miss the next chapter. We uncover the truth behind some of the world's darkest mysteries, and part 2 of this case is coming soon.